Hello darlings, welcome to this video. I hope everybody is well. I am well, and yeah, this video was actually inspired by one of the darlings when she made a comment on one of the videos that I recorded. I think it was during Vlogmas, and it was actually one of the Q&A videos where I was answering your questions, and she made a comment on my response, based on my response about the loss that I've experienced. And I felt that her comment might be valuable or worthwhile for me to record a video just to unpack on what she said, with the hope that it will find resonance with somebody. That is the whole point of these sit downs, for me to record and share about things that I think whoever gets to watch this video may find value in it. So let's get into the video. But before we do, I want to welcome all our new subscribers. If you are new here, welcome darling, and I really hope that you will enjoy your stay. But I also want to thank you for joining our darling nation. So yeah, welcome. I have some notes that I've written down so that I don't forget the things that I wanted to talk about. So I might be looking down every now and again. I'm actually going to read the comment that she made. I'm deliberate about not mentioning her name. I just don't want to draw unnecessary attention to her. But when I talk about this, she will know, because she's a regular supporter of this channel. She would know. But I did say to her as well when she made that comment that I think I will make a video based on her comment. She said, "I feel like after a loss, you become a different person. 2 years later, I'm still struggling to fit back into my church. I feel like I'm a different person and do not fit in anymore. Hence, I no longer participate in anything social. I run away to the car immediately after a church service, avoiding small talk, but the struggle is better." So my thinking is that she's experienced some kind of loss. The loss that I mostly talk about, that is applicable to me, is financial or material loss. But some of the things that I'm going to share are things that can be applicable to other kinds of loss. So yeah, when she raised this thing, it was just sad for me to hear that, because I could relate. It's something that I also went through when I went through my loss. So then I really felt that, chances are a lot of people are going through the same, and that is okay, because it's a progression in terms of the healing, because you have to go through a healing process based on the loss, when you've lost something, someone, and so forth. There's a period of grief, there's a period of sadness. Part of the grieving process is you wanting to remove yourself from people. But here is the danger with that. Before I go into the danger, the thing is, as human beings, we are designed to interact with others. We are designed to relate with other people. We are interdependent on each other. Therefore, loss sometimes robs people of that aspect of being human, the social connection, the social interaction, and so forth. Therefore, it's important to guard against such, because like she said, that she just runs away after a church service and runs into a car and leave. And that's not how we're supposed to live our lives. It doesn't mean we have to have a large group of people around us. We isolate and distance ourselves based on certain emotional and psychological factors. So I'm going to talk about those factors, and then we'll talk about what is it that you can do to sort of integrate yourself back into your social circles. It's quite important. No man is an island. We may be people who prefer to be by ourselves, but we do relate to other people. We have friends, we have people that we trust, and so forth. The first one is that loss comes with shame and embarrassment. And so sometimes because you're ashamed, you just don't want to be interacting with people, and you're embarrassed. And we do so because society has a tendency of putting people on a scale based on what they possess. And that thing sits at the back of our minds. And you feel like you belong in a particular social circle based on what you have, based on your accomplishments, based on what you've acquired. And when you don't have those things anymore, you feel like you don't belong. And hence why people would distance themselves from other people. So that's the first one. It's a shame and embarrassment. The second reason we distance ourselves is a fear of being judged. It's actually linked to what I've mentioned above, because you think now that you don't have these things that made you feel like you're part of this circle, people are going to judge you. And because the loss comes with a lot of pain as well, you just cannot stomach feeling like people around you are judging you, because it's almost like rubbing salt onto the wound. So you'd rather protect yourself by just not going there because you're fearful that you're going to be judged. And it also brings with it a sense of insecurity. As people, we find security in what we have, whether it's conscious or subconscious. I'm not a psychologist, so I don't have the technical explanation of these things, but we find security in what we have. We find security in our homes. We find security in our cars. We find security in our partners. We find security in our jobs and all of that. So when one of the things that we find security in is removed from the equation, we feel a sense of insecurity. And when we are insecure, we feel vulnerable around other people. So sometimes it becomes easier to just say, I'm going to stay away, because you are just insecure about the fact that you've lost your car and you've lost your job and things like that. And then another reason for distancing is it's just being overwhelmed, and the grief that I spoke about earlier. You definitely grieve the loss of whatever it is, the loss of your job, the loss of your personal belongings that you've spent money on and stuff like that. So when you're going through that grief and you're still being overwhelmed by the fact that you've lost these things, it sometimes feels like it's better or it's easier for you to just stay away from other people. Another reason is if the things that you lost or the thing that you lost was very tightly linked to your personal identity, then we stay away from other people because we feel like we've lost our identity. But I want to emphasize that happens if what you've lost was very, very tightly or closely linked with how you identify as a person. So if your job or your career is what defined who you are, when that is not in the equation anymore, you feel lost. You feel like you don't know who you are anymore. Sometimes you're not even sure how you're supposed to show up, because this thing that you showed up as is not existing anymore. I'm hoping I'm articulating that as clearly as I am thinking about it in my head. Another reason is the fear of being a burden. I can relate to that very, very well. You just don't want to be a burden to other people. I've always been an independent person. I've always believed in just doing things for myself. Over the years, I've grown and I've come to understand that it's okay to receive help, but at the top of who I am, I'm this independent person. For example, when I did not have a car, and at the time, the concept of Ubering and all these e-hailing services was not as prominent and as it is now. So sometimes I would just excuse myself from going to certain places because I just don't want to bother somebody to come and pick me up and to go and drop me off. And maybe I did not have the desire to use public transport because I was so accustomed to having a car and things like that. It's those things are very primary when you are still grieving, when you're still going through the healing. But as you heal, you realize, you know what, I could have just taken a taxi and went there. It would have been okay. But when you are still grieving, those things are very primary. So I avoided a lot of things and a lot of people because I just do not want to burden people. Another reason is you wanting solitude, and that is linked to still going through the grieving process and and the sadness that comes with all of this. You want to be alone, and that is okay, and that should be allowed, because that is when you get the chance and the time to process all of these things, and you can release them, and then you can start maybe slowly but surely allowing people back into your space. Another thing as well is that if you've experienced loss before, the second or the third loss triggers the feelings that you felt and you experienced when you lost the first thing that you've lost. So it's almost like a trauma response. So those are some of the things that make us want to distance ourselves from people. Most of them are things that are normal. It's a normal process to go through when you've experienced loss. But this is where the danger lies. The danger is it's very easy to find comfort in just being alone, in shutting everybody else out, in just living in your own little cocoon. That's where the danger is. It becomes very comfortable. And as I mentioned earlier, as human beings, we are designed to relate with others. We are interlinked with other people. So it does not serve you anything good to close yourself off for good. It does not. So that's where you need, we need to hone in and zone in and guard against that. There are no time frames when it comes to processing the loss, when it comes to grieving the loss. There are no time frames, but you would feel it when you start feeling a little bit okay, to start interacting with other people. When you start feeling that you're okay with interacting, you must also be active about making sure that you do that, because when you don't, it's always easy to revert to solitude. So I remember a time when I started, I went through most of the things that I mentioned above. But when a time came when I started becoming, a little bit okay about talking about the loss without me crying, without me feeling sad. I remember the first person I was just open to and openly spoke about the loss was with my friend. I just became very vulnerable with her. And I mean, she knew about my loss. She'd seen it and all of that. But I had never been so open with her, just to detail how I felt, to detail the experience and so forth. So that was the first person I opened up to. And when I did that, I felt like, okay, I think I'm getting better. And then I was okay to talk to other people about it. But I did not talk to just anybody about it. It was people that I could trust, people I felt that I could trust. Other people knew about it from hearing it from other people, but I did not give them the audience to talk about it openly, because it's people that were not, or people that are not close to me. But I was also okay with the fact that people know about it. It is what it is, and that's that. But when I had isolated myself from people, it was also about, I don't want people to know about my business, and at some point, because there's anger as well, in the mix. I remember at some point, I used to say things like, if anybody just asks me about my things, I'll give them, a bit of my mind. And that, if you think about it, was just deeply rooted in anger, So, but when I started feeling okay, it didn't really bother me much, the fact that people knew that I lost my house, that people knew that I lost my car, people knew that I did not have a job, I did not have money. It didn't bother me as much as I was healing. Then when you start integrating yourself into your social circles again, it's okay for you to say to somebody who wants maybe to raise the topic with yourself, and it's somebody either you don't want to have that conversation about your personal challenges with at all, or you are not ready maybe to share your experience with that particular person. It's okay for you to say, yes, that's what I went through, but I'm not in a position to talk about it now. I find that people do respect when you vocalize what you feel and how you want to handle your situation, rather than avoiding the scenario at all. So that's another way of approaching it without you feeling that you constantly have to run away from people. It's also my experience that people do respect the fact that not now, maybe at some point, but right now I don't want to talk about it. And yeah, then you talk about, so how was the conference last week? The focus swiftly moves away from your issue to start talking about other things that you can relate with and be comfortable to talk about. So I'm gonna mention just a few things that you can do to start integrating yourself back into, socializing. The first and the foremost one is God. You pray about your situation. You cry unto God. You ask God for healing, because you have to heal from that particular loss, because it creates a wound. So you ask for healing. You spend time in the Word of God, reading about the promises of God around that matter. So that's the first and foremost. But God is first and foremost in everything. In terms of the other things that you can do practically, is to go to therapy. I'll always advocate for therapy because it helped me a great deal. Go to therapy. I know that therapy is not accessible to everybody because therapy is not cheap, and not everybody has the affordability for therapy. I know that very well. If you have the affordability to go to therapy, I would say that's the first step. One of the first practical things you can do, go to therapy. If you don't have accessibility to therapy, like having one-on-one sessions with a psychologist, is to find a support group, around the challenge that you have. And if you can't find a support group for whatever reason, there's nothing stopping you from starting a support group, because chances are there's a lot of people who are going through what you're going through, but they also maybe don't know where to go to. So that's another practical thing that you can do. Okay, I'm going to go back to something that's linked with therapy, which is counseling. You can also, go to counseling. And there's counselors mostly that I have experienced that I can talk about, counselors within the church. But as I read, if you remember the Darling's comment that I read when I started this video, she was talking about not being, comfortable or wanting to be active at church. Shortly after a church service, she'll run away and go into the car and leave. So somebody can also say the same, to say, but I don't want people from my church to know what I'm going through. That's still fine. You can always identify another Bible-based church that you can go to and ask for counseling. Church counseling is free, and church does not only counsel its members. Anybody that comes to a church and asks for counseling, they should be able to receive that. That's what church is about. I know that different churches are run differently, but the general rule is that church can offer counseling at no cost to everybody who comes and seeks help. So if you don't want to get counseling from your church, find another church that is that believes in the same thing that you believe in, that preaches the same thing that you are convicted to believe about the Lord. Find that church and go to counseling there. Usually with therapy, with counseling, once you've gone there once, twice, 3 times, certain things start to settle, because you would have had, deep and honest conversations about what you are feeling. Because sometimes the reason that makes us to feel like, hey, I don't want people, I don't want this, I don't want that, it's because we are not confronting how we are feeling. But once you've confronted how you are feeling through therapy, through counseling, things start to settle. It doesn't mean you are healed immediately, but these things that are sitting here start to settle because you've confronted them now. Then you can reach out to somebody that you trust. It could be your friend, it could be anybody that you probably had good relations with before this loss, before you were flung into this feeling of just distancing yourself from other people. So you can reach out to them for a coffee, and you can be honest with them to say, I just miss you, I miss us, interacting. I'd like us to have coffee, but I don't want us to talk about my situation. I just want to see you, and I just want to, spend time with you. And in spending time with that person, it doesn't have to be about you. It could be about anything else that is common between the two of you. It could be about their kids, your kids, it could be about work, it could be about anything besides your situation. So you start there. And nothing beats being honest with your people to say, right now, I'm not in a position to talk about it. I'm not comfortable yet. Maybe I will be at some point, but right now, I just want us to hang out and have coffee, and that's that. Another practical thing to do is to join a club of something that focuses on something that you enjoy. If you are an athlete, you run, join a running group. And then you know that you have these people that you're going to meet up with either every weekend or every second weekend, whatever the time frames are. And the focus in that group is just about running. It's not about other things. Yes, we do tend to develop relations or friendships in groups like that, but it's not an immediate thing. Usually it takes time until you've connected with this one person maybe that you generally talk to, and over time you become close. But when you initially start, honestly, the focus is just about the activity that you do, whether it's running, whether it's hiking, whether it's reading, whatever it is that is of interest to you, find such. Therefore, you are interacting socially, but you are not, the interaction is not focused on your issue. It's about your interest. So that's you also integrating yourself into society without the focus being on your issues. Another good thing that I've personally experienced is to volunteer, and it's either in a formalized volunteering program or very informal. But what helping other people does, it sort of reignites your sense of purpose. And it brings so much joy when you see something materializing and you know that you've contributed in that thing. For example, like if it's sort of a formalized volunteering program, maybe at church, you go to a children's home to do whatever that is your church activity. Just to see the joy in those children and all of that, it brings a lot of joy in you as well, to know that they are happy because you contributed in them being that happy. And for example, in a church setup, those are the first sort of low-key avenues you can start participating in as your way of integrating yourself back into the church circles and the church social scene. And slowly but surely then you can go back maybe to where you've been before. But if also you choose to remain in the low-key social scenes, that is still okay. But at least you are interacting with other people, because that is what we are driving at. We're driving at the point of you have to go back in and integrate yourself back into interacting with others. Also, just in your personally in your life, there are people around us that we know that need help, that can do with the help that we can bring them. And the help does not have to be monetary. It can be your time, it can be your resources. So that's another way you can use to integrate. And volunteering comes, it contributes to your healing process as well, because like I say, you just derive so much joy from knowing that somebody else is happy, somebody else has achieved something because of your efforts, or because you contributed into that situation. When you've started doing this integration now, it is okay for you to occasionally pull back and go back to your solitude to just assess how it's going for you. The assessment is you are assessing how maybe what you've done so far feels like, has made you feel, and then look at whether there are adjustments that you have to make, so that when you go back again now to the social circles, you know where the touch points are, you know what to avoid, you know what not to entertain, so that you are better equipped when you emerge again, and you are your best self when you resurface. But all in all, it's very important not to sit in that hole by yourself for the longest of time. It's not good for us. We are, like I said, we are meant to relate with other people. And what I also found is that when you now are okay about talking about your situation, you find help from other people, because what we know might be limited information that we know, but other people may actually give you practical things that you can do to be able to resolve your situation going forward. Because at the end of the day, yes, it's a loss, yes, it's this, but you also need to work on it so that you know how to move ahead and move on with your life. So in your interactions with other people, you are able to find those kinds of things. You're able to find people who will help you and say, I know so and so who works at the bank. I'll tell them that you're going to call them. They can assist you with this. At the end of it all, we have to heal as we continue living. Life does not wait for us and say, okay, I'm going to park and allow Bonagele to heal completely, and then we'll resume life again. Life does not work like that. So we heal as we go on. But there are things like the things that I've shared that we can apply. We sort of safeguard ourselves by applying certain things, so that as we are healing, we are limping, we are journeying, but we've put some safeguards to say, yes, I'm continuing, but I'm just putting this in place so that I don't get hurt as I'm trying to heal from this. I don't know if I'm making sense. That's just what I wanted to share based on the darling's comment. I also just want to say that socializing, when I say socializing, I'm not talking about the hyped up aspects of socializing. I'm just talking about reintegrating yourself to being able to relate with, no matter how small your community is, but just being able to relate with your people again as and not isolate yourself. I hope you find value in this. These things I share from my own life experiences and the information that I've acquired over the years, but it does not in any way constitute professional advice. Hopefully it will prompt you then to go seek professional advice. I'm going to end the video here. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for joining me. If you've watched until here, please remember to give the video a like and join and subscribe if you haven't subscribed. And yeah, thank you so much, my darlings. I will catch up with you in the next video. All right then.